Good day, and welcome to the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation 100&Change Q&A webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Lynn Van Deventer. Please go ahead.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining this Q&A webinar today. I just have a few housekeeping items. The first one is, as you heard, the session is being recorded. We'd also like to ask that you ask your questions via the chat box. So any questions that you have at any time during the presentation, please enter them in the chat box. We just have a brief agenda today. In just a few minutes, I will be turning things over to Cecilia Conrad, who will give a brief introduction, and then I will turn things over to my colleague Jordan Bloomhart, who will provide a demonstration of this application process, including some tips and tricks of completing the application. And then we'll really spend the bulk of the time answering your questions. So again, please enter those questions in the chat box. And then the last item on the agenda is that we'll wrap up and give you some reminders about deadlines. First of all, we are going to do our best today to answer as many of your questions as possible. However, if we are not able to answer your question, you can still get it answered by submitting it to questions@100&change.org. Again, that email address is questions@100&change.org. The other thing I'd like to please note for everyone is that the submission deadline for your application is next Tuesday, August 6th at 11 a.m. Central. Please note that is at 11 a.m. Central in the morning on Tuesday, August 6th. That is a firm deadline. I also want to encourage all of you to not wait until the last minute to start your application. Please do not wait until the last minute to submit your application. And please do not wait till the last minute to ask us questions that you might have. Our team is standing by to respond to your questions, but we want to be able to get as many of them answered in advance of the submission deadline, which again is Tuesday, August 6th at 11 a.m. Central. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Cecilia Conrad.
Good afternoon. And welcome to our second webinar. As Lynn said, we have basically not quite a week left to finish your application, so I hope that you are all making good progress. As you know, 100&Change is a MacArthur Foundation initiative where we are searching for a single project that will receive a $100 million grant. And we want the project to solve a problem, take a big slice of a problem, or unlock the resources required to solve a problem. We've asked that the project meet 4 criteria. The first is that it be impactful. And we've defined impactful to include something that might impact a large number of people, but also something that might impact a smaller geography or a number of people or population, but it has a very deep impact on them. So impact here can mean both breadth or depth. The second criteria is that it be evidence-based. This is not a competition to test out a new idea or to do basic research or clinical trials. We are looking for projects that have persuasive evidence that if you can implement a solution effectively, that it will have the impact that you've identified, that will address the problem that you've identified. The third criteria is that it be feasible. And here we're looking both at, does your team have the ability to successfully implement the proposal? And we're also looking at whether you've thought through what might be the impediments, be they political or social or economic, to successful implementation, and how you plan, and whether or not you've thought about how you will address them. And then the final is durable. We are looking for a plan for how you will sustain the impact of your work well beyond when the $100 million grant is finished. The $100 million grant is intended to be paid out over 5 years. Applicants will have, if you advance in the process, you'll have an opportunity to outline exactly what that flow of funds needs to look like for successful implementation of your project. I look forward to answering as many of your questions as possible today, and best wishes on completing your applications.
Thank you, Cecilia. Jordan, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a sample website we use for these demonstrations. Many of you probably already know, if you've been in and active on your application, how to get to your application, either through the application link here at the top of the page or through this status box on the dashboard. One helpful thing about this status box is that it'll give you exactly what it's called. It'll give you a status, letting you know exactly what percentage of the requirements you've completed. And this box will also let you know if you've submitted your application successfully. This not submitted here at the top of the application box will change to received once you've successfully submitted the application. Go ahead and jump to the application and review a few things there that may be helpful to you. A couple things here to start with. At the very top of the application, we have a couple of other statuses that allow you to track your progress. Right here at the very beginning, you can see 52 out of 57 requirements are complete on this application. This black status box will also move with you as you work through the application, letting you know your requirements complete, as well as when your application was last saved. So the application auto-saves, and every time it saves, this will turn green briefly, and the timestamp will change to let you know that that has saved. You can review your application a couple of different ways. View application as a PDF will allow you to download the application as a PDF for your own records or to share with a team member, things like that. Preview application is a slightly different view. It will allow you to view your application as administrators of the competition might see it, or as a judge might see the application. Rather, will see the application. My apologies, I accidentally just exited out of that view. 1 second. We will get back to our application here, and we will begin talking about our application requirements. Since I have only 52 of 57 requirements complete, there are a few application requirements in here that I will still need to complete in order to be able to submit my application. The quickest way to review what application requirements you are missing, if your status hasn't met the 57 requirements complete yet, is to look for these check marks throughout the application and these check boxes. If a checkbox does not have a check mark in it, then your application either has not been completed at all or doesn't meet the instructions that have been provided here in the application. In this case, for the executive summary, I need to provide an executive summary of 150 words or less. You'll see down here we've got a word limit that's listed here. If you try to enter more than the limit, it will just stop and not allow you to enter more words. Here I have completed the application. The check mark has appeared to let me know it's complete, and my tally has gone up to 53. The next requirement we'll look at that has not been completed yet is the video presentation. Be sure when you're creating this video presentation to carefully review the instructions listed here and some of the requirements for the video. There are several things through here that are important for you to consider. First of all, make sure your video is set to public or unlisted. If it's set to private, you will not be able to share it through the application. I'll show you a little bit about that in a minute. A few more things are that it should be no more than 90 seconds. It should be in English. It must be captioned, and it shouldn't contain children without parental consent. There are several other suggestions through here and other items like that that you should probably, or we would suggest that you carefully review before you create that video or complete it. Now, to upload or add the video to your application, you can take the URL of the video and paste it in here. We're just going to go ahead and do that real quick using the last application webinar video. Once you do, it should extract the video ID from that URL, and then you can click Upload to add it to your application. If for some reason the video doesn't work, there are a few steps you can go through to test your video to make sure it is set right on YouTube in order to get it to play on here. First of all, one thing you might check is to make sure that it's uploading only the YouTube video ID. The quickest way to find that ID is in the URL itself. So if we go over here to the URL, it's always between this equal sign and the ampersand sign in your URL. So if for some reason the video isn't working, one step is just to try copying and pasting just the video URL or video ID into that box. A couple of other steps are things I already mentioned. So if you have your video set to private, when you try to enter it on here, it will not be able to play because it's only private to you. So in order to do that, you will need to open your video settings on YouTube for that particular video and make sure that you have met those requirements. Over here you can see we have a visibility option. I want to make sure that visibility is not set to private, but is set to unlisted or public. One other thing you may want to check on this video, sometimes it gets turned off depending on how your video settings are, is to go into your advanced settings and make sure that this video is able to be embedded on another site. Down here you'll see this option of allow embedding. So you want to make sure that that box is checked. So allow the video to embed on your application. Now that this requirement is complete, I could try to move on to see what other requirements I still need to finish here on the application. Primary area of expertise is not completed. We can go through here and explore all the different categories to select an option, or I can search by a topic to see what options are available. There are several different documents you'll need to upload for different requirements through the application. This is one of them, the Memorandum of Understanding. If your team consists of 2 or more organizations, you will need to upload an MOU between those organizations. If there are multiple agreements that need to be added or uploaded, just make sure to include them all in one PDF since you can only upload one document. So to upload the document, it's very straightforward, like uploading anything else to the internet if you've done that before, is to select a file from your computer and select upload it to the application. It will go through a upload progress as well as malware review to make sure there's no malware attached to that document. And once it uploads and confirms that it is the correct file format, the requirement should be complete. If you are not on a team that consists of 2 or more organizations, you can easily bypass this by selecting this not applicable option right here. Look, I have one more requirement to complete here on the application, and that is the budget. There are a few things about the budget that I can explain that will be helpful to you in completing that requirement. We'll get there eventually. Here we go. So for the budget, we'll provide 3 different phases that will total to $100 million. It must total to $100 million in order for the application to be considered complete and for you to get it checked off here on your application. In this case, I have all of the phases completed, but I do not see it checked as complete. So I need to brainstorm a little bit about what's going on here. First of all, if you look down here at the very bottom, it'll give you all of your totals. Right now, it totals to $101 million. So that's our first problem. I'm going to go up here and change one of these to take away $1 million. But my budget has still not been checked as complete. So the next thing I want to check to see is if there are any empty fields or rows. You'll see that here we have an empty field on both of these items in this row. So if you have any empty fields or rows, the requirement will not complete either. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that row. And now my budget is complete. If you need to add more line items or add something back in that you've reviewed, simply click this Add Line Item button, and you'll be provided with more rows as needed. Once you've completed all the application requirements, this Submit Application button will appear, and this message letting you know that your application is complete. In order to submit the application, or once you submit the application, you will no longer be able to make changes to the application. So as much as we encourage you to not submit at the last minute, please make all of the edits and changes that you might need, or do not submit the application until you're absolutely sure you will not need to make any further changes. Looks like it's just going to take a second for it to submit. There we go. So to confirm that your application has been completed, you'll see this, your application has been received message right here. You will not be receiving an email or any kind of notification from the system that way. This is the place that you would look to make sure that your application has been submitted. The one other place that you can check, which I mentioned earlier, is the application status box on the dashboard page. So in this case, after I've submitted my application status box will read 100%, and it will read Received. I believe that concludes the demonstration here of the application.
Great, thank you, Jordan. This is Jenny, and I will go ahead and start reading off questions. We'll get through as many as we can, and like we've already said, if your question is not answered on this webinar, please submit it to questions@100&change.org, and we will respond to you as quickly as possible. Okay, jumping in. First question, our organization is a new company, and we don't have any previous budgets to submit. Is this a problem?
This is Cecilia speaking, and we do require 3 years of audited financial statements. So if your organization is new and does not have those documents, you aren't eligible for submitting an application as the lead. You could be part of a larger team where someone else is the lead organization.
Thank you. Next question is about the video. And I see the question submitted asks about a video and comments on a 90-minute video. Just to clarify, it is 90-second video. And the question is, do I need to give a brief history of our organization on the video?
No, that's not necessary. I hope that in your description of your team, you'll give a little bit of background and context for the project. Your video should really focus on identifying the problem you intend to solve and what your solution will be.
Great, next question. How do we prove parental consent for minors in the video? We have signed forms.
Emily, do you want to answer?
I can take that one. We don't actually require you to prove that you have consent form for minors. We just recognize that it's best practice, and any video that you're making publicly available, you should have those signed consent forms, so you can just keep them on file in your office, but you do not need to submit them as part of your application.
Next question. My financial audit file for the last 3 years is larger than the required file size. Am I able to send 3 separate documents?
So I can answer that. This is Lynn. So no, your file needs to be in one PDF, and we recognize that you may need to use a PDF shrinker to lower the size of the file. And Jordan, I believe that, can you confirm the size of the file? I believe it's 10 megabytes. It has to be less than.
Yes, it is 10 megabytes.
Thank you.
I will scroll down here too, not here. Here we go. I believe that's the limit for any of the uploads that we have.
So Lynn, are you saying that they should consider a zip file? Is that what you mean when you say a shrinker?
Yes, or they can actually use a utility to reduce the size of their file. And if you're having questions, I would say if you have any issues or questions about that, please just email us. We've got some suggestions we can make for you about that.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, do we leave other funders blank if we do not need co-funding over $100 million? Or should we fill in funders who have funded other projects that include components of the proposed project?
I can take this one as well, Cecilia. This is Kristen. So in the directions, it does state that if you do not have other funders, you should enter not applicable. So please make sure to read those directions and do that if those funders do not apply. If you have had funders of the proposed project in the past, or significant amount of funding for activities that are a big part of your project, you can include those in that funder section and provide an explanation. We would ask you to provide an explanation if you were to move on to the next phase of funding or the next phase of competition.
Great. Next question. It is unclear what to include in location of current solution. Does this include current projects being implemented that are not the same as the proposed project, but have components of the proposed solution?
The location refers to the location of the work that you are proposing in the project.
Great. Next question. If we have trouble while uploading the application in the coming days, is there a way to get a faster response than the response time on the forum or via email?
So the fastest way to get a troubleshooting response is to send an email to questions@100&Change.org. Our team typically responds within a couple of hours, so I really strongly recommend that you send any issue that you might be having to questions@100&Change.org. But please, please, please do not wait until the last minute.
Thank you. Next question. We received grant funds for a component of this project. However, these will be finished this year. Is it beneficial to include these in the financial section under other funders, and do they qualify? The proposed date of our project is long after these grant funds expire.
Well, let me say a couple of things about the. Oh, go ahead, Kristen, and then I'll.
Oh no, that's okay. Go ahead. I just think that yes, you would want that.
The other funders is a question that provides some information to us. It is, if you don't have other funders, do not hesitate to continue to apply for 100&Change. If you have other funders, it's useful for us to know. One of the things we are committed to doing to the applications that end up in our top 100 or end up as a finalist in the project is that we work to put these in front of other donors, these projects, because we know we're going to have a lot more ideas than MacArthur will fund with its single $100 million grant. One of the things we're proud of from the first 100&Change is that we've leveraged over another $250 million for projects that were in that competition. So this is informative for us as we work on that aspect of the project. Kristen, did you want to add anything?
No, that's it. And I think just to reiterate, this is not something that's disqualifying if you have not had other funders. It is really for informational purposes for us.
Just remember to put in not applicable if you don't have any.
Yes.
Next question. What should the format be for the budget narrative, and should numbers from the budget be stated again here?
Well, it is a narrative, and so you should be writing in text form. The text form does not need to repeat the specific numbers in the budget. You should refer to the categories. You want the two to align to each other. And the budget itself is intended to be a high-level budget of general categories of expenditures. We don't expect you to identify that you're going to pay Sam $20 to do something, for example. And if you advance, you will be requested in the finalist stage to do a much more detailed sort of budget. So at this point, it's high level, and there should be an alignment between the categories you describe in your narrative and the categories you've listed in your budget.
Great. Next question. I've had trouble with things disappearing, things not showing up sometimes and then showing up again. This seems to be solved, but in light of technical glitches with the application, how can we be sure nothing disappears after we hit submit?
Yeah, so this is Lynn, and so first of all, we are committed to working with you to solve any technical issues you might be having. Again, please do not wait until the last minute to contact us about those. And this particular person who's asking the question, I know that we've been working to solve your problem, and I would say that if you are not using Google Chrome, we strongly suggest that you use Google Chrome as your browser when you're completing your application. We do support other browsers, and we do test for those, but it's not possible for us to confirm that every combination of browser and device is working appropriately. So please do use Google Chrome, and again, we are committed to helping you through any technical issue you might be having.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Next question, can you provide an example for other resource requirements? Is this an opportunity to describe the assumptions our project works under?
The idea behind other resource requirements is really, we've asked you about the financial resources that are required. Sometimes projects may require non-financial resources. It may be that you are expecting some in-kind support from some areas, or it may require that you have support from certain types of government agencies or policymakers. It's an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you've thought through the full resource needs of your project, not just the financial ones.
Great. Next question. If one of our partners that has signed our MOU has also helped fund the project, should we also place them in the past funders section of the application?
Certainly, you can do that.
Great. Next question is technical related to the video. Is it okay to submit our video with captions already included instead of using the YouTube automatic captioning service as described in the application instructions?
So yeah, I think that's fine. Yes, they just have to be captioned. It doesn't matter how they get captioned. Is that right?
That's correct.
Great. Next question is related to peer-to-peer review. On the 100&Change evaluation site, it states that during peer-to-peer review, each applicant will score and comment on 5 other applications within the same domain. How will the domain of a project be determined?
We will be using what you have self-described as your domain to assign you to a group.
And by domain, we mean primary area of expertise, because we don't have a category labeled domain in the application, but we will be using your primary area of expertise.
Wonderful. Next question. For the budget, can endowed fellowships be part of our budget/funding stream for the 5 years and beyond?
No, we do not allow endowments, and we also do not allow fellowships to individuals. Those are not eligible expenditures for 100&Change.
Next question. Is it acceptable to provide the estimated cost for internal and external evaluation within the budget narrative or budget notes instead of the line item in the detailed budget?
I wouldn't think of this as an either or. You should have a line item in the detailed budget that refers to monitoring, evaluation, and learning costs, and we understand that this will be an estimate.
Great. The next question is clarification about keywords. Can we include keywords in this format? And it looks like it's just using no spaces. Examples such as leadership development as one word and leave no one behind as one word. Would these be searchable?
Yeah, so I think we have an email. I know you also submitted the same question to questions@100&Change.org this morning, and we have an answer queued up, so you should be receiving that a little bit later today. However, keywords need to be recognizable words, so our recommendation is instead of submitting leadership development as all one word, you would submit it as 2 words with a space between leadership and development. And the second part of the question here around the video is that the requirement for the video is 90 seconds, not 100 seconds. And we strongly encourage you to meet that 90-second video requirement so that your application may remain eligible.
Thank you, Lynn. Next question, how do we make hyperlinks in the bibliography?
You just need to include the URL.
Next question, can you please confirm that the word limit is 150 words for each of the project phases, not 150 words cumulatively?
That's correct.
And continuing that, in the bibliography section, do we need to use a particular citation style?
No, you do not. No, you do not. There is no specific bibliography citation style that we're asking for, just for you to insert any key citations that you may have.
Next question, is there any more details or examples available of the level of budget detail you desire for the initial application?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question?
Yes, they're just asking about level of detail for the budget. What level of detail are we looking for in the budget?
All right, so the budget should be fairly high-level categories such as personnel, travel, capital expenditures. It should not be any more detailed than that in this stage of the application process. Should you advance and become a finalist, we will be asking for a more detailed breakdown of the budget.
Great. Next question. Is there a word or character limit on the bio statements under key staff?
There is a word limit. I believe it is 100 words.
Next question. What is the rule for taking part in multiple applications? Is it allowed, and how will it affect the assessment of our application?
Each team must have a unique set of members. And what I mean by that is someone cannot be a member of multiple teams, a member of multiple teams that are submitting to 100&Change. Multi-unit institutions might have separate submissions from different units of the institution, but there can be no overlap in membership.
Great. Next question. When a submission is made, is it possible to replace it before the deadline if an error or addition is identified?
Once the submission has been made, it's considered complete, so please do not click Submit until you're sure that your application is complete and final.
Next question. Our solution involves 6 countries. How would you recommend we approach this in the location of future work question in Section E, which only provides 5 spaces for countries?
You can make a decision about where you think the work will be primarily located and organize it and rank it in that way.
To add on to that, you can also include in the narrative part of your application the additional places where you will be working.
Great. Next question, back to citations. Someone's commenting it's very difficult with word count to substantiate solid evidence. Do you have any tips on shortening normal references?
Again, we're not looking for a specific citation official reference style here. So if you need to shorten it to, if you want to shorten your references to the title or the author and a link out to that particular bibliography citation, you can do so. You don't need to use a standard format that has all of the various components in it that you would use in an academic paper or some other official citation.
Thank you. Next question is regarding top 3 donors section of the application. Are you asking for donors who are only giving to our solution specifically in the 5-year project period, or to show donors who have given in some fashion to this project even if we started implementing the solution years ago?
So I can answer that question.
Go ahead, Kristen.
You can show donors who have supported it in the past or donors who are currently supporting it now. It is up to you to choose which donors you add there. Again, we're using this for informational purposes just to get a sense of what donors may have funded the work previously or currently. And again, this is not something that is going to require you or will make you ineligible if you do not have any funders. You can add not applicable.
Next question, can you explain more about non-financial requirements?
When I say financial requirements, I'm really referring to money. And there are other aspects that may be required for successful implementation of your project. It could rely on volunteer time. It could rely on access to some space or natural resource, so it is up to you. It depends on the specific project, so I can't be completely comprehensive here to address what other resources are required, and if there are no other non-financial resources required, to write not applicable.
Thank you. Next question, can you discuss project partners within the application without an MOU?
If you have defined your project as a collaboration and identify partners as part of the application, we will be looking for a signed MOU for those partners. Emily, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that makes sense.
Great. Just looking through questions. Under Section G, resource requirements, I think we already went through this. Are there characters or word limits on project phase descriptions?
Yes,
there are character limits. Go ahead, Lynn.
Oh yeah, I think it's 150 words.
Okay. Next question. My company's application has my name on it and not my company name. Does that matter? Does the application have to have the company's name on it? If so, how do I change the name?
So I think this may be referring to the registration name, and it's fine for your name to be the registrant. However, when you were filling out the registration form and the application, there's a reference to principal organization, which is the organization that would be the recipient of any grant fund should they be awarded. So please make sure that the principal organization is filled out correctly.
Great. Next question, how many line items will you typically assume to see in each phase? This relates to the level of detail that is expected.
So I think this is referring to the budget question, the phases in the budget. We are not assuming to see any particular number. We want you to provide us a high-level budget of what it will take for each phase of the work in the high-level categories that Cecilia partially explained earlier.
Great. Next question, if an organization only has one MOU, can it still be submitted?
There needs to be an alignment between what you've described as your partnerships and the MOUs that you submit. If you do not have an MOU finalized with some partners, they shouldn't be listed as partners. As if you advance, you may be adding partners and MOUs at a future stage in the competition.
Great, and kind of continuing with the MOU theme, someone is asking about partnerships and will future operators who act as service providers on the project, do we need to integrate them in the MOU?
I think if you're doing a service for hire, kind of a work product for hire, or a service for hire with, I'm not sure who operators are in this context, I wouldn't consider them partners in the execution of the project, but people to whom you would be paying professional fees, and you would have that as a line item in your budget.
But I would add that if it's a critical organization that is going to be receiving quite a bit of grant funds through the provision of services, you know, it might be a good idea to have an MOU.
Great. Next question. Can multiple members of the team have access to the application online or only the lead?
The application can only be accessed by the registrant. So whoever the registrant for your organization is the username and login that has to be used in order to complete the application.
Great. Next question, diversity, equity, and inclusion section. Does that apply to the population we are working with or internal staff or both?
Kristen, can I ask you to tackle that?
Sure. It refers to both. So it should be both beneficiaries as well as stakeholders, staff, consultants, etc.
Great. Looking through here real quick. In location of current solution, we are implementing our solutions in 2 countries nationwide. How do we specify nationwide implementation?
You could do that in your narrative, that it would be nationwide in the 2 countries you've identified.
However, in the location drop-down list, you do need to select the country, the state or province, and then the city, county, or region. We recognize that this is not going to be accurate for everyone, but please just do the best that you can by selecting the location that most closely matches where you'll be working.
Next question, could you explain what you are looking for or give an example of what you're looking for with the technical process description section?
So an important thing to remember in 100&Change is that your project is going to be evaluated by a panel of people that we've called the Wise Head Panel. They are people who are leaders, thought leaders across a broad range of areas who are really smart, capable of giving constructive feedback, but they are unlikely to be experts in your particular area. If you are producing a project or proposing a project that has a lot of technical information required to explain it, you need to think about how to explain it in English and in accessible English to this Wise Head panel of generalists. But we've given you an opportunity with this question to explain it in more technical language. I think this mostly will apply to projects that have some technology embedded or relying on some science area or some particular theoretical, that requires some particular theoretical knowledge. So that's the idea. This is a place for you to be able to describe your project to someone who's a technical expert in your specific area of work.
Great. The next question, which I think is a good thing to clarify, about the profile on the website. So the question is, can we submit 2 videos? It looks like there's another option to post a video or something you like, which I believe refers to the profile. So I just want to make sure we're clarifying that.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So the profile part of the application is not required. The peer reviewers and the Wise Head panel will not see that. No one will be reviewing that part of the application. The only video that's required and is important to be included and will be seen by the reviewers is the video mentioned in the application. Any part of your profile you can ignore. That is not required.
Thank you. Next question, does the theory of change need to include specific metrics like a logic model, or should it focus on broad if-then logic?
Hello?
So,
okay. It should.
Go ahead.
Okay, and then you can add on. It should explain the theory about why you think the solution you are proposing is going to work in a way that's most effective for your specific project. And I will let Kristen add on to that.
Yes, and again, we don't have a specific format in mind. We want you to take what you believe is your theory of change for your work and explain it narratively.
Great. Next question. Is it possible to upload letters of intent to support the implementation, but is not a formal MOU?
If you've described someone as a partner and that this is a collaboration, then there needs to be a signed MOU from that partner. If you have letters of support from other bodies or intent of support, you should hold those. If you advance in the process and get to the finalist stage, there will be an opportunity to provide those letters.
Great. We have a couple of questions about the key staff. Can the people we add on key staff be different from the people we provided as contacts when we signed in at 100&Change? I believe those are the contacts on the registration form. And then also, we have extensive people, both staff and external experts, as key personnel. How do we decide which 3 to include?
So I can't speak to the changing of the registration form contact information. So yes, you can go to your registration form on the menu and edit your registration form and update that information as needed. No, I would say in terms of who you include as key staff, I would, that's really up to you. Who are the folks that are the most knowledgeable about the project that you're proposing?
And to clarify that question, I think part of it was asking, can the people listed on the registration also be included in key staff on the application?
Yes.
Great. Next question. Can the most recent years, hold on, sorry. Okay, so related to the audited financial statements. Our organization has 15 years of financial statements, but they are not audited financials. Could we do, obtaining audited financials is costly. Could we do this if we advance to the next round?
All right, this is Cecilia. I'm back. I'm sorry, something happened to my line. We do require 3 years of audited financial statements be submitted along with this first application.
Thank you. Next question, are you only limited to 3 phases for the project?
We've asked you to break, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Susan. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with the delay.
We've asked for 3 phases to be broken into this application. Should you advance, there's an opportunity to spell out in greater detail what you think the key phases and milestones are, and I'll let Kristen add to that.
No, that's exactly right. So for this part of the application, we're looking for you to break it into 3 phases.
Thank you. Next question, are clinical trials completely off limits for the 100&Change grant?
Yes, they are.
Next question, what if we are a coalition already who work together as one unit? Do we need separate MOUs when we will organize an overall project team within our organization?
I'm going to ask Emily to do that.
Yes, this is Emily. So if the team members are all from the same organization, you don't need an MOU. If it's amongst various organizations, then you would.
So Emily, I'm going to ask a follow-up to that. If the organizations have an existing kind of cooperating agreement, are there circumstances where that would function as an MOU? I know that's a question we've had in the past.
If it addresses the relationship that they're going to be having during the course of this project, then I think it would, but for me it's a bit hard to imagine, having a relationship, an MOU that addresses how they're going to be working together to carry out the 100&Change use of the funds from 100&Change.
And let me follow up with that to just point out to people that there is a description of what the key elements need to be in an MOU. And so we urge you to pay attention to that.
Great. Just have a few minutes left. Next question. Can you please elaborate on the difference between scaling and operating at scale in the solution stage?
All right. I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I'm going to tackle it and then others may join in. You may have tested something in a pilot, have done a little bit of proof of concept, and are now just beginning to think about whether you are going to expand to other places, as in sort of scaling by replication, or are just beginning the stages of increasing the numbers of people that you might serve. You might also have a project that is already sort of at the place of the numbers of people that you're planning to serve, but in some ways you're proposing to deepen it in some way. And I think, that's one example of the distinction between the two. Kristen, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's on point, Cecilia.
Great, thank you. One other clarifying comment. There's several here about this. Can you clarify what is meant by endowments are not eligible uses of funds?
We do not intend for 100&Change funds for the $100 million to be used to endow an institution or to endow a scholarship program, or to endow some other form of grant-making activity. An endowment are funds that you put aside in an account, you earn income on those funds, and you use that income to fund activities or services. That's not an approved, eligible use of 100&Change, the 100&Change grant.
Great. Next
Emily,
question.
do you want to add to that?
No, we're good here.
Great. Next question. Should costs for reasonable accommodations to make our project accessible be represented on its own line item on the budget?
Yes, we ask that you do that. We want to make sure that people are paying attention to needs of making their project inclusive and accessible.
Great. Do you fund a project that involves distributing usable instruments or equipment to the beneficiary?
It's difficult to answer this outside of any specific context, but if the proposal addresses our 4 criteria and does not involve ineligible types of expenditures, and this does not sound like it does, then it would be certainly something that you should try and make a case for.
Great, so I have a couple minutes left. So here's kind of a final question. Several people have asked, can you please further clarify the current location of solution versus future locations?
Yeah, so there have been a couple questions, and let me just make sure that I answered the first question in the way that the questioner intended. So you have 2 choices of location questions on the application. One is current location, which is for if you are already engaged in the kind of work that you are proposing for this project. And then you have, and that's referring to where this project works, not to all the work that you're doing in your organization, but the work that's specific to this project. And then there's a question about future location, that if you're not currently doing the work that you're proposing in this project, where do you plan to do it? The current location should first of all be specific to the kind of work you're talking about in the project, and there is an option there, not currently doing the work, implementing the work or implementing the solution. I think that's the language there. And otherwise, you would definitely want to identify the locations where your future area of work might be. We ask you to make the best choices you can, and when you describe that, you can amplify in the description of your project. And as you advance, we'll be able to fine-tune your discussion of what your locations might be. Kristen, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's perfect.
Great, and I think we're at time. I just want to quickly acknowledge that I see multiple questions in here about specific technical concerns. We have a team of people that will help you. Just please submit that concern and/or issue to questions@100andchange.org, and we will get back to you.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Again, we really appreciate you joining the call today. Again, the submission deadline reminder is Tuesday, August 6th, 2019 at 11 a.m. Central. That is a strict deadline. Please do not wait until the last minute to submit. And please also send your any outstanding questions that you have as soon as possible to questions@100andchange.org. And with that, I'll turn things back over to Cecilia.
Thank you again for not only participating in the webinar, but for your interest in 100&Change. And know that the work that you're doing is important and is dedicated to helping to make the world a better place. So I applaud your actions and your work, and as I said earlier, wish you the best wishes on your application. Just a few things I want to amplify. First of all, the deadline is coming. It is 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. For those of you who are in international locations, be sure to look at the U.S. Central Time. If you use one of the apps on a phone, that means look up Chicago. That's where MacArthur Foundation is located. The other thing I just want to emphasize that we said at the outset is Please do not wait till the last minute to submit your application. Try to leave some buffer zone to complete it and submit it so that if any problems emerge, we can help you navigate that. I am personally looking forward to reading your applications. I find it inspiring to hear about the wonderful ideas and the work that people are doing all over the world. Thank you.
That does conclude today's conference. We thank you for your participation.